Hello everyone. In this session, I am going to review chapter number 3, demand and supply and elaboration. I'm assuming that you all have read chapter number 3 from your textbook and also have attempted practice questions that I've already uploaded to your course website and also on to your Connect website. So these are the learning objectives of this chapter. So I'm just, this is on your screen. So take a moment and read these objectives. So these are the 7 objectives that we are, I'm trying to cover these objectives in this chapter. So let's start this chapter and let me quickly recapitulate what we are going to do in this chapter. First thing, remember in chapter number 2, I discussed how a shift in the demand curve or the supply curve will impact equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. In this chapter, we are going to analyze the shifting of these two curves at the same time and examine the impact of these changes in both curves, that is demand curve and supply curve, on equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So that is the first topic. The second topic, we talk about price controls. There are 2 types of price controls, price ceilings and price floors. So we'll discuss these 2 price controls as well. And then we will discuss quotas and sales taxes / subsidies. So these are the basically 3 to 4 topics in this chapter. So let's start first by examining the determinants of the demand and supply curves. And if you remember, this is the summary of what we did in our last session. So these are the determinants of demand. That is, these are the factors that shift the demand curve either to the right or to the left. On the other second column, we have determinants of supply. So these are the factors that will shift supply curve either to the right or to the left. What we are going to do, we will shift these 2 curves together and see how this will impact on equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Excuse me. So basically, this is the conclusion. When demand and supply change at the same time, simultaneously, the effect on the price and quantity is inconclusive or indeterminate. How we are going to actually derive this conclusion? Let's start with first shifting the demand and supply curve to the right at the same time or simultaneously, right? So there are 4 scenarios. This is scenario number 1. And don't worry, I'll summarize everything. So in scenario 1, increase in both demand and supply. By increase, I mean I'm shifting demand curve to the right and also supply curve to the right. So both curves are shifting rightward. You can see in the diagram as well. So demand curve is shifting from D1 to D2, rightward shift, and supply curve will also shift from S1 to S2. Excuse me. So if they increase the same amount, the equilibrium price remains unchanged. Note the price of labor is called the wage. So this is basically in the labor market, but you could have taken the same scenario in the product market as well. So don't get confused with this let me write here. Just give me a second. So don't worry about this wage level. This is the price of labor. So if I had any product X instead of labor, then I have here price of X. So it does not make any difference. Okay. Now in this diagram, you can see that the initial equilibrium was the intersection of S1 and D1 curve. That is this curve. If you see, this is the initial equilibrium point. Okay. And when both curves shift rightward, the new equilibrium will be here at this point, which is the intersection of both new demand and new supply curve, that is D2 curve and S2 curve. Notice that there is no change in equilibrium price. See, equilibrium price is same, so there's no change, but equilibrium quantity increases from here to here, that is from Q1 to Q2. So only equilibrium quantity increases, equilibrium price doesn't change. But this is not the only possibility. There are other possibilities as well. For example, if I shifted this demand curve or supply curve, let me put supply curve from instead of from S1 to S2, but to S, let me see which color I'm using. Hold on a second. So this is S, so let me take this color. Okay, hold on. Now, if I shifted this curve here, this is S3 curve instead of S2, then the new equilibrium would be here. And you can see this equilibrium, new equilibrium is, so equilibrium price decreases. Equilibrium quantity is still increasing. So now the whole scenario changes here. That is, if the increase in supply is more than the increase in demand, then equilibrium price decreases, equilibrium quantity increases. Now notice here, it says if they increase the same amount. So in the initial diagram, we assume that the shift in the demand and supply, the magnitude of the shift in both cases is identical, same. But the supply curve that I plotted here, S3, shows that the increase in supply is more than increase in demand curve. And that is why equilibrium price decreases. But how we are going to summarize everything? Let's see. So hold on a second. I am going to, don't worry about this. Yeah, okay, hold on a second. Yeah, this is a blank sheet. So now I'm going to summarize everything, right? And this is what you have to remember. First, if you remember, so I'm drawing two different diagrams, separate diagrams. And this is how you can understand this four different cases. So first diagram is this. So I'm drawing, oh, sorry. Okay, I'm drawing this. So this is X, any commodity. This is price of X. This is demand curve. This is supply curve. This is equilibrium Q1. And this is equilibrium price P1. Okay, this is initial diagram. Now, suppose if I shift demand curve only to the right, I'm not shifting supply curve right now. I know I have to shift later. So if I shift the demand curve to the right, and this is the topic that we covered in our last session, if you remember, that I shifted the demand curve in that session to the right and showed you that equilibrium price will increase and equilibrium quantity will also increase. So I'm writing the conclusion. Equilibrium price increases, equilibrium quantity increases. Okay, remember this. Whenever demand curve shifts to the right, equilibrium price increases, equilibrium quantity also increases. Sometimes we don't write E as equilibrium, so I just write P increases, Q increases. And by P and Q, I mean equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Now draw another diagram for supply curve separately. So if I draw supply, demand, same demand, supply, equilibrium quantity, equilibrium price. Now I shift the supply curve to the right like this. So I shifted the supply curve to the right as S prime. See what is happening. I know equilibrium quantity is increasing because this is the new equilibrium point. But equilibrium price decreases. See, this equilibrium price decreases. So what is the conclusion? The conclusion is when supply shifts rightward, equilibrium price decreases, equilibrium quantity increases. Okay. So now you have these two separate shifts in the supply and or demand and supply curves. Now I want to combine these two together. That is, if I want to know what would happen if demand curve shifts to the right and supply curve also shifts to the right at the same time. So basically I'm combining these two diagrams in one diagram, which has already been drawn in these slides. So you have to go through those diagrams. But I can tell you the conclusion, the final conclusion. See, in both cases, if you notice that equilibrium quantity is increasing in both cases. So we are sure, and now I'm finalizing here. So if demand shifts to the right, and this is how I write, that demand increases. And if supply also increases, that is supply curve shifts to the right. So if they both curves shift to the right at the same time simultaneously, then one conclusion is that equilibrium quantity will always increase. That is for sure, because you can see in both cases it is increasing. So if you combine, it must also be increasing. The problem with the equilibrium price, in one case equilibrium price is increasing, in another case equilibrium price is decreasing. So now it depends which impact is more compared to the other. For example, if equilibrium price increase in equilibrium price is more than the decrease in equilibrium price, then the net equilibrium price will increase. So I'm writing like this. So equilibrium price will increase overall, increase in equilibrium price when this number is greater than this number. What if this same number is less than this number? Then equilibrium price will decrease. If they both are equal, suppose if you shift the demand curve and supply curve by the same amount, by the same magnitude, then increase in equilibrium price is exactly equal to the decrease in the equilibrium price, and they cancel out each other. So there's no change in equilibrium price. So I can write no change. So all three possibilities are possible. So let me summarize. If demand and supply curves shift rightward, equilibrium quantity will increase. Equilibrium price may go up, may go down, or may stay the same, remains the same. There's no change. These are all three possibilities. So rather than writing all these three possibilities every time, we just use this word indeterminate. So we write like this. I don't have space here. So when demand curve shifts to the right, when supply curve shifts to the right, then equilibrium quantity will increase and equilibrium price is indeterminate. That is, you cannot determine. Why? Because it will depend on the actual shift in the demand and supply curve. So you have to know that what is the magnitude of the shift in supply and demand curve to determine whether equilibrium price will increase, will decrease, or will stay the same. But if you know that these two curves are shifting rightward only, you don't know the magnitude, then you cannot determine what would happen to equilibrium price. And that is why we say that equilibrium price is indeterminate or inconclusive. Okay. So now there are four possibilities. These are four possibilities or four scenarios. So number one that I've already discussed with you. So these are the four cases. Number one. First case is When demand increases, supply increases, then you know what would happen. Equilibrium quantity increases, equilibrium price indeterminate, right? I can't write the whole word. Indeterminate. Okay, that is first. Second possibility or second case would be number two. Number two case is demand decreases, that is shift to the left, supply curve shifts to the left, and you have to fill. Demand decreases, that is shift to the left, supply curve shifts to the left, and you have to fill this. What would happen to equilibrium quantity? Of course, one of them is indeterminate, but I don't know which one. Number three, demand increases and supply decreases. That is another possibility. And the fourth one is, and you have to find out what would happen to EQ and EP. Fourth possibility is demand decreases, but supply increases. So these are the only four possibilities. Yeah? So these are the only four possibilities. You should know the impact of these shifts in demand and supply curves on equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So if you notice here, all these diagrams are, all these diagrams are drawn here, right? So let me go back first and I'll show you. So this is the first case that I just explained. See this, and you will understand, I'm sure. If demand increases, demand curve shifts to the right. Now, they are not writing, they mean these authors, equilibrium, word E, just P and Q. So when demand shifts to the right, you know equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity both will increase. When supply curve shifts to the right, you know equilibrium price will decrease and equilibrium quantity will increase. So you can see equilibrium quantity is increasing, equilibrium quantity is increasing. So I'm sure that equilibrium quantity will increase. But for price, you are not sure. Why? Because here EP is increasing, here EP is decreasing. So you don't know which effect is stronger. And therefore you can't conclude. And that's why they wrote question mark, which means indeterminate. So equilibrium price is indeterminate and equilibrium quantity will increase. This is what I showed here, if you remember here. This is what I showed here. Now let's talk about the all three remaining scenarios. So these are all three remaining scenarios directly, right? See what is happening. So when both curves shift leftward, what would happen? Equilibrium quantity will decrease for sure, but you are not sure about prices. When one demand curve is shifting rightward, supply curve is shifting leftward or decreases, then equilibrium price will always increase, but equilibrium quantity, you are not sure. That is indeterminate. This time equilibrium quantity is indeterminate. When demand decreases and supply increases, then equilibrium price must decrease for sure, but you are not sure about equilibrium quantity. Why? Because it depends on the magnitude of the shift in these two curves. So these are all these four scenarios, right? Diagrams are also drawn in these slides as well, but let me show you one thing. Hold on. Okay. Okay. Hold on. Just give me a sec. So now you understand this. See, when demand and supply change at the same time, that is simultaneously, the effect on the price and quantity is inconclusive. That is either equilibrium price is indeterminate or equilibrium quantity is indeterminate. It is not possible that when two curves are shifting at the same time, then you can be certain what would happen to equilibrium quantity and equilibrium price. That's not possible. Yes, you are sure of either equilibrium price or equilibrium quantity, but the other component must be indeterminate because you don't know the actual magnitude of these shifts. Okay. Now let me show you all these diagrams that I've drawn Well, first, because in the slide, all diagrams are not drawn here. So just give me a second and let me add one file and then I'll show you. So it will take probably less than a minute. I'll do it real quick. So this is chapter number 3. So on your course website, I also uploaded lecture notes, and in the bracket, my name, Naved. That is my handwritten notes. If you have difficulty reading my handwritten notes, then you can always ask me. But I'm going to show you one thing here. So I just uploaded this file. This file says chapter number 2 and 3 at the same together. So let me show you here. So see, these are this is chapter number 2. So explain chapter number 2 in detail by taking example. What I've done, I have drawn all possible diagrams here. See, all in chapter number 2, remember, we talked about shift in demand curve, both to the right, to the left. Here, the supply curve to the right, to the left. So all 4 cases are here. And for the, so these are all examples and everything. But see, this is what I have done here. So I have drawn all these possibilities, if you see here. Let me first explain. So first I have drawn the first 4 diagrams where I show you that if these 2 curves shifts one by one, not at the same time, what would happen? See, when, okay, hold on, let me change the color. Oops, sorry. Just give me a sec. Okay, hold on. See, when demand shifts to the right, what is happening? Equilibrium price increases, equilibrium quantity decreases. This time I wrote P and the superscript or subscript as E. Okay, so PE is same, equilibrium price. Now, when demand curve shifts to the left, see this direction, left, then equilibrium price decreases, equilibrium quantity also decreases. And then when supply curve shifts to the right, when supply curve shifts to the left. And then I combine. So first I take, these are not in the same sequence that I showed you earlier. So increase in supply, decrease in demand. These are the 3 possible diagrams. But these are the 3 possible cases. And you can see in diagram number 1, let me write 1, you can see I shifted supply more than shift in demand. You can see the gap between the 2 curves. Here I shift exactly same, the shift in aggregate supply and shift in aggregate demand, they are the same distance more or less. And that is why there's no change in quantity. And you can see this time I shifted demand curve much more than this only supply curve, right? So supply shifted less than the demand. And you can see that in all these 3 cases, one thing is common, that price is decreasing, price is decreasing, price is decreasing. But in one case, QE increases, no change in QE or QE unchanged, and QE is decreasing. So my conclusion would be equilibrium price will decrease, equilibrium quantity is indeterminate. And therefore, and you can see I have drawn all these possibilities. This is the second scenario, decrease in supply and increase in demand. This is the third scenario, and this is the fourth scenario. So I've drawn all these diagrams for you that I've already uploaded to your course website. You're not going to find all these diagrams in your textbook, unfortunately, but I have given you all those options. Okay. In the exam, in your midterm and final exam, since your exam will be online, I will use a lockdown browser. It will also be recorded. So this will be a closed book exam that I have already sent you a message. So you are not required to draw diagrams online, right? But you should know the end result of these shifts. So you should know if aggregate demand, if demand curve shifts to the right and supply curve shifts to the left, what would happen to equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity? Okay. So now let me go back to our chapter number 3 PowerPoint slides. So let me open this file again. It will take a few seconds, I believe. Chapter 3. Okay. So this is chapter 3. I have completed this simultaneous changes in demand and supply. I completed this part. So I've discussed these 4 scenarios. Now, problems with markets. So, we know that equilibrium is calculated by the intersection of demand and supply curves. And we calculate equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity, but we have problems with this market structure, which we will discuss all those 4 market structures in later chapters, so don't worry. Markets do not always adjust as quickly as we would like. So sometimes it takes time to reach to equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Let me draw here diagram, and then I will erase this diagram at the same time. Sorry. So if I draw this demand curve, this supply curve, okay? Now, this is equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. Now, suppose demand shifts to the right, like this. This is the new equilibrium price. This is the new equilibrium quantity. This is the new equilibrium price. But, diagrammatically, it looks easy. But when demand shifts to the right, new equilibrium quantity, this is the new equilibrium price. But, diagrammatically, it looks easy. But when demand shifts to the right, the market will not reach from this equilibrium to this equilibrium instantaneously, right? It takes time, because the moment demand increases, what would happen? You have excess demand. So demand is more than the supply, and this excess demand will shift the price curve upward, but it's not instantaneous right away. It takes time. So that is the first problem, that markets do not always adjust as quickly as we would like. It takes some time. So that is the first problem. Now let me erase this diagram. Second problem is markets do not always produce equitable results. The equilibrium price does not mean that is the best price. Equilibrium price is a price where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. That's all. But that is not necessarily equitable. For example, if I take a market, let's take a market for apartments, for rental units, and suppose this is the quantity of rental units, this is the price rent, and this is demand, and this is suppose supply, and suppose rent is let's say $1,100 for, let's say, 1-bedroom apartment, for example. Now, although the equilibrium rent is 1,100, but for low income people, they might not afford this $1,100, and they can't rent a 1-bedroom apartment. So equilibrium price does not mean that is the best price. Equilibrium price simply tells you that there's no shortage in the market. The demand and supply curves intersect, or quantity demanded equals quantity supply. But this rent may be higher for some people, and therefore may not be equitable, because the price is determined by the intersection of demand and supply. Okay, so that is another problem. We'll discuss this problem in a moment. The third, competitive markets may not exist for some goods or services. Now, since we haven't talked about what do we mean by competitive markets, we will discuss this in chapter number 8, where we discuss competitive markets, monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competitive market structure. But let me just introduce one thing. By competitive markets, I mean, excuse me, that there are large number of sellers, and they are selling identical products. But that is not always the case. So the equilibrium price that is determined by the intersection of demand and supply is not applicable in all types of products. For example, public utilities. So the let's say the product is electricity. This price of electricity is not determined by the intersection of demand and supply, because there is only one or two companies that are providing these services. They can charge whatever price they want according to your demand. So it's not freely determined in the market. These companies have monopoly power, and therefore they can easily charge higher prices by restricting its supply. And that is the reason most of these companies are regulated by the government, because government regulates these monopolies so that they can't charge more than equilibrium price. So these topics will be discussed later on. Don't worry if you don't understand. What you need to understand, the first 2 points, that markets do not always adjust as quickly as we would like, and markets do not always produce equitable results. Basically, in this chapter, we will emphasize more on this topic. That is, market do not always produce equitable results. If this is the case, then government should intervene and should, have some certain policies in order to make the production more equitable and make people in the low income groups, in the low income group, access those goods and services. Right? So these are the two regulations that we are going to discuss. First, what we call price ceiling, and the other one is called price floor. So when the government regulates the price of a product, it is called a price control. So all these two are, under the umbrella of price control regulations. So government actually regulates price level of any specific product. Now, what is price ceiling? What is price floor? The definitions are on your slide, on your screen. A government regulation is stipulating the maximum price that can be charged by a product, for a product. That is, by price ceiling, I mean that seller cannot charge higher than this price ceiling. Suppose if government says the price ceiling is $10 per unit, $10 per unit. What is the meaning of this price ceiling? That is, sellers cannot charge by law more than $10. They can charge definitely $9. If they want to sell their product at $5, no issue. But they are not allowed to charge more than $10. This is what we call price ceiling. What is price floor? Exactly opposite. Price floor means they cannot charge lower than this price. So for example, if the price of a product is, let's say, $6, let's say per unit. So if the price is $6, you can charge $7, $8, $9, $5,000, no issue. But you cannot charge less than $6. And I'll tell you, the application of these two price regulations in a moment, so don't worry. So now you at least know the definitions of these two concepts, that is price ceilings and price floors. Let me show you the price ceiling and price floor using simple demand and supply diagrams. Right? Okay, I'm sorry. So these are some of the examples, but I'll discuss here. So yeah. So these are the two examples of price ceilings. Necessities during wartime shortages. What does this mean? So during wartime, there are shortages of goods and services. So suppliers, since they see shortages, they start charging higher prices. So government actually regulates these suppliers by imposing price ceilings. That is, you are not allowed to charge more than this price level. And also in the rental market. So in rental market that I gave you earlier, if suppose the equilibrium rent is $1,100, then government says, no, the price ceiling is $900. So landlords cannot ask more than $900 for, suppose, one bedroom apartment. So these are the two important examples of price ceiling. What is the problem associated with price ceiling? Price ceilings actually cause shortages. So there are shortages due to price ceiling, which I'm going to show you using this diagram. So this is a typical diagram for a price ceiling. And the example is rent control. Okay. So by rent control, basically you can see I have number of rental units in thousands on the horizontal axis, and the rental rate, that is rent, basically is on the vertical axis. Now look at the first, what is the equilibrium price? There's no government regulation at this moment, suppose, right? So market is freely operating and there's no government intervention. So if there's no government intervention, according to demand and supply curves, the equilibrium price must be $1,000. That is, if you can afford $1,000, you can rent this apartment. Okay. And equilibrium quantity is 100,000 units, right? Because the data is in thousands. So this is 100. I'm not, going to keep saying 1,000. So 100 units. So 100 apartments will be rented, and each tenant is paying $1,000. Market is clear. There's no shortage because those who are willing to pay $1,000 for rent, suppliers are also willing to supply. Supply means landlords are also willing to give their apartments for rent at 1,000. Market clears. But it does not mean that 1,000 is the best rent. So if government thinks that rent is too high and therefore put a restriction, that is rent control or a price ceiling. And suppose the price ceiling is $600. This is the price ceiling. What is the meaning of price ceiling? Price ceiling means that landlords are not allowed to rent their apartments more than $600. And that is a problem for the landlords. What would happen? Look at this diagram. So according to the landlord, that is, they are the supplier of those rental units. So according to their supply curve, when the rent is 600, only 90 apartments are available for rents because rent is very low. And these landlords are not willing to rent their apartment at this low rent, but this is fixed by the government. So they can't do anything. The demanders, that is those who are actually want to get those rental units, right? So they are willing to rent 120 apartments, but the available apartments are only 90. That is the problem. So there is a shortage of 30 rental units. That is 30 individuals or families are unable to find these apartments, these available 90 apartments. So there's a shortage of 30 apartments. That is the problem with rent or price ceiling or rent control, that it creates shortages. Okay. Now, my question is, suppose you have the same rental market here, and now instead of government decides to put a price ceiling, and suppose instead of $600, government actually put a ceiling at $1,200. What would happen? At $1,200, that is this price, somewhere here, 1,200. So see what I'm doing. Basically, now I'm fixing rent at 1,200, that is above the equilibrium price. You know equilibrium price is 1,000. So what would happen? Remember, ceiling means that employers or suppliers or sellers cannot charge prices more than, you cannot charge the price of this specific product more than $1,200. They can definitely charge and are allowed to charge less than $1,200. So if government fixed this price ceiling, 1200 as a price ceiling, what would happen? You can see here at 1200, this is the supply, this is the demand. So there are more people who are demanding these rental units and there's less supply. What would happen? Price will decrease because there is excess supply. Landlords are unable to rent their apartments. What they are going to do? They are going to lower their rents, and that is legal because price ceiling is 1200. So price will decrease automatically and will eventually reach to this equilibrium price. So there's no impact of price ceiling. When you put a price ceiling above the equilibrium price, it will not have any impact. The market forces will bring the price back to the equilibrium price, that is 1000, and there's no there's no benefit of setting a price ceiling above the equilibrium price. So when you fix the price, when you fix the price here 1200, this price 1200, that is price ceiling above the equilibrium, is called non-binding price ceiling. So price ceiling is non-binding. There's no use. The market forces will automatically bring this 1200 rent back to 1000. So there's no point fixing price ceiling above equilibrium price. So that is not non-binding. Any price that is fixed by the government that lies below the equilibrium price, that is 1000, is binding. The market forces will not bring this price in this direction back to, I know there are shortages here, and because of this shortage, rent should increase and reach to this equilibrium price. But because of the government law, this regulation 600 price ceiling, the rent will not increase. And therefore, landlords are forced to rent at 600. They are not allowed to charge higher rents. They know that there are shortages. More people are willing to apply for their rental units, but they can't charge higher prices because of the law, because of the price regulation by the government. And therefore, this $600 is called binding price floor. Binding price, not floor, sorry. Binding price ceiling. Okay. So this is the difference between binding and non-binding. So price ceiling is binding if it is less than the equilibrium price. Now, I just discussed earlier that we have shortages here because of price ceiling. What will happen? How government will actually take care of this these shortages basically. So these are different options. How to decide who gets the scarce product? Because in the diagram, if you can see, demand is for 120 apartments, but available apartments are only 90. Who are going to get these 90 apartments out of these 120 families? What is the rule? Is there any rule? There must be some rule. So these are the rules. Number one, the market. That is, whoever can pay this $90 will get these apartments. Lottery system, that they have all the 120 applications and then just draw their names, and first 90 will get this apartment. First come, first served. That's another possibility. Producers' preferences. I remember several years ago when there was a shortage in the rental market, landlords were actually requesting your whole resume, and they were really looking for your jobs, and there's so many things that they were looking for. Why? Because they want their best tenants. So there's a competition, and sometimes their preferences as well. And rationing by government as well. So government can also provide rationing. So these are different options of allocating those shortages. Same analysis for price floor. Examples, minimum wages. So price floor is normally applicable in the labor market and in the agriculture market. So let's discuss. Price floor is exactly opposite of price ceiling. Now, price floor is always fixed above the equilibrium price. If you fix price floor below equilibrium price, it will not be binding because the price will go up and reach to equilibrium price automatically. In price floor, you can charge higher price floor, price higher than price floor, but you cannot charge lower that. Are you getting my point? So, for example, if the government fixes this price floor at $7 per bushel, then suppliers or producers or sellers, they cannot charge lower than $7, but they can definitely charge $8, $9, $10, whatever, but not lower than this. So if you fix a price floor here, that is useless because this price will create shortage, and when there is a shortage, price will increase, and it is allowed to increase the price in price floor. So price will eventually reach to the equilibrium point. What is the point of fixing price floor? Price floor will always be fixed above the equilibrium price, so that you cannot go back. You cannot go down to 6. It is not permissible. It is not allowed. You can charge definitely higher prices. So price floor is normally is in the agriculture market or in the labor market. Let me see if I have that diagram or not. Yeah, we do have an example of labor market. But now let me discuss first the agriculture market or agriculture products basically. Now, what is happening actually? Suppose this is the market for wheat. And wheat is a staple and we all need wheat to survive. Suppose in the agriculture sector, mostly in developing countries, suppose the price of cotton in the market, that is market price of cotton, is very high compared to wheat. Farmers are not going to grow wheat. They are going to grow cotton in order to make more money. But wheat is also very important for our survival. Then government intervenes in this market and fixes a price floor. That is, by law, government actually fix price above the equilibrium. Why? Because now government is giving incentive to sellers. Government is saying that buyers cannot buy wheat less than $7 per bushel instead of 6. Why? This will give incentive to wheat farmers so that they can grow more wheat because of these higher prices. But there's a problem attached to this policy. So whenever there's a price floor, you can see here there's a surplus. That is, farmers are growing more wheat. Why? Because they know that they are charging higher prices. But consumers, some of them, they're not going to buy them wheat because prices are increasing. And therefore, these farmers are unable to sell these 10,000 whatever or million bushels of wheat. What they are going to do with this excess wheat, they are unable to sell. Then government will have several options. One option is that, let me see if I have here so that I don't have to write. Yeah. So this is dealing with surpluses basically. What to do with the surplus product, wheat, for example. There's so many ways. Government can also store this. So government actually will buy wheat from the farmers at the price floor, $7, and then store in their godowns so that they can use later. Convert it, sell it abroad at a reduced price. This is what we call dumping. I don't know we'll discuss this or not, but don't worry about that. Dumping simply means when governments or producers are selling their products in another country at a price even lower their cost of production in order to destroy the foreign market. So that is considered illegal. Donate it and sometimes destroy it as well. So that they simply destroy. Why they are destroying, why they are putting price floor, simply in order to favor their farmers. European countries or European unions are giving millions of dollars of subsidies to their farmers, right? Why? Simply to support their farmers. That's all. So that is one application that is in the agriculture sector. The other application is in the labor market, minimum wages. In Alberta, the minimum wage is $15. So, and the equilibrium wage is actually $11 only. So this is suppose $11. So equilibrium wage is 11, but price floor is $15. That is, employers cannot hire workers less than $15 an hour wage rate. That is price floor. But there are some advantages, there are some disadvantages of this policy. I know this price floor is binding. Why is binding? Because the government fixes at $7 an hour, there's no point, because there's a shortage of workers, and therefore employer will offer you slightly higher wages in order to attract more workers, and wages will automatically increase from $7 to $11. So there's no point fixing price floor below equilibrium price or equilibrium wage. So price floor is set at $15. Now those who are, now see here, let me show you here. And it's easy and you will understand, I'm sure. See this, hold on. So before price floor, okay, before price floor, just read the market. Before price floor, suppose 100 workers were working and they were getting $11 an hour wage rate. Okay, this is before any government restriction. Okay, 100 workers. It says in 1,000, but I'm just saying 100. So 100 workers. Now, because of this price floor, because of this price control, what happened? Actually, 90 workers are now working instead of, not 100, instead of 110. Why? Because when 90 workers are now working instead of, not 100, instead of 110. Why? Because when wage rate goes up from 11 to 15, these additional 10 workers are also interested in working because they're attracted by this higher wage rate. So when there's a price floor, these 90 workers who were also working before the price floor at $11, now they are earning $15. So they are very happy. These 90 workers are not against price floor. They are happy because before the price floor, or because before the minimum wage law, they were earning $11 an hour. Now they are earning $15. They're happy. These 10 workers, these from 190 to 100, they lost their jobs. Why? Because the employers are not willing to hire all of them. Why? Because they are giving higher wages. So they are now more picky. And also, some of the workers who were not working even when price was 11, now they are willing to work. And they also can't find job at $15. So these 20,000 workers are unemployed. They're not working. Why they are not working? Simply because minimum wage rate has gone up. That the minimum wage is now $15. That is the problem. Now see, there are pros and cons of this policy. Number one, those who are still working, they're always happy for this policy, or they are always for this policy, in favor of this policy. Those who lost their jobs, they're against. Definitely they are against. Why? Because they're earning, they're not getting a job. Now there's another group. Suppose if you were before the price floor, if you were earning $19 an hour, maybe you are skilled workers, you are educated, and you are working at a wage rate of, let's say, $40 or $50 or $100. You are not even concerned about this $15 minimum wage law. Why? Because for you, this wage rate is not binding. So even if it is 11, 15, or 20, you are earning $40, it does not, impact you anyways. So those who are in skilled workers are not hurt by this minimum wage law or by this minimum wage policy. But those who are unskilled workers and lost job because of this minimum wage law, they are against this policy. Okay, I've done this. Now then we have a new topic, and I think I should take a break. And so this is part one. So when you see the recording website, right, you'll see chapter number 3, part one. And after 15 to 20 minutes, right, I will upload the second part of this chapter. In that part, we'll discuss quota, we'll discuss taxes, and subsidies. Okay, so just take care. Bye bye.